It has taken us a long time to establish what we call the West today. The West has been so successful that many countries, irrespective of their geographical location, whether it be to the east or to the west, have adopted similar methods of government, economic policies, and personal and political freedoms to varying degrees of success. These countries that have best achieved that ideal can be considered Western in culture and custom. And these are the nations where we see people of the world wanting to live and to travel to. People flock to these countries legally and illegally to benefit and gain a share of the prosperity that is enjoyed there. The West was established by a series of fundamental beliefs and values, such as liberty of conscience, rule of law, freedom of religion, and freedom of speech. These nations are also built by the sacrifice of time, labor, sweat, and even blood in some cases. The kings and queens of old gave way to the authority of representative governments, chosen by the people to enact laws and govern the affairs of men. It's an imperfect system, whereas there are always losses where things don't go the way for the minority. But we seem to have gotten on fine. We carry on with life and hope for the best. Stephen Kotkin spoke recently about the challenge of the West being a challenge of managing success. We've managed to establish an abundance of food, where the majority of mouths are fed. Rates of poverty have declined considerably and show no signs of slowing. The concern today seems to be more so that some aren't lacking, but those that have an abundance have more than is tolerable. The West is on the brink at the moment. Its foundations are being undermined, the very foundations that hold our civilization in a firm and sturdy place. In order for any structure to maintain its shape, its form, and its function, it must be maintained. We are failing in that responsibility and struggling to manage the successes that we have achieved thus far. There are three challenges I want to address and focus on today that threaten the very foundations of the West. The first is the moral obligation to help others prosper in the same way the West has. The second is the foundation of our identity as individuals, in families, in communities, and in society at large. The third is the decline in morality in the West. There is a responsibility as prosperous nations to help those in need. The majority of the world does not enjoy the freedoms that are enjoyed in the West. And it's not a simple challenge. It is very difficult to achieve. My question today is, at what cost must the West bear to fulfill their responsibilities? Is it possible for the West to take every refugee, every oppressed person in the world? I don't think it's possible. If the channels were open, there would be an endless stream of travelers seeking a better life in the promised land of the West. There's already a long list of those professionals in the wide world looking to travel to the West. Countries like Australia take individuals with relevant skills into the country. These high-skilled individuals contribute greatly to the economy and to social life. The question I wonder is, what is the impact of the West draining all the talent from the wider world? When those talented individuals may be the catalyst for change that might see their home countries develop into the jewels of the world. Countries where Westerners want to travel to live, study, work, and to holiday. Now, with the responsibility that we have, it is my view that the best way that the West can support and help the wider world is to help them in their own countries. And this might mean reducing migration, reducing the number of talented individuals that the West takes up and adopts into their own. It is a cost, and it may come as a cost to the West, no longer receiving the best and the brightest from the world, but I wonder what the impact would be on the countries where these people come from? Would it improve their countries? Would that talent be the means that they need to improve those countries, to establish freedoms there that they don't now enjoy? Europe accepted thousands of refugees from all over the world. Hundreds of boats came from northern Africa into Italy. If Australia hadn't stopped the boats from Indonesia, we can expect the flow of men to only be limited to cash resources and the number of rickety boats available to carry souls across the deep. The reality is the West cannot save everyone. There comes a point when countries with less liberty and prosperity will have to face the problems that ail them. They will have to fight for their lands, work for their lands, and become nations of promise. It appears to me that traveling west, either by boat or by plane, or to claim asylum during a Commonwealth Games, as we've seen in the past, is an easier option, one that denies the rights of individuals from those countries to establish themselves as nations of promise, an opportunity that is available to all men if we believe that we are all created in the image of God and that we are endowed by our Creator with talent and great potential. So what is our responsibility then? Our responsibility must be to support those people. Our responsibility should be, at times, to say no, in the hope that the rejection may lead to greater prosperity for the wider world. The second challenge is the challenge of our identity. Who am I? What am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? These are the questions asked by thoughtful human beings everywhere. Parents have passed down the knowledge to their children for generations, knowledge that answers these questions for them, that puts their minds at ease. The answers given to the children in history were far more simple than they are today. Sons were told they were boys that they would one day grow to be men. They were told what their responsibilities were as boys, and they were prepared for the burdens they would carry as men in the future. A family might share with their children their ancestral heritage, the men that fought in wars, and about the mothers that bore the children down through the ages. These questions are being answered differently today. A boy might be told that he can be whatever he wants to be, that he can do as he pleases. He might be spared the burden of truth and wrapped in cotton wool to protect his sensitive feelings, rather than instilling in him a sense of responsibility and resilience. These boys who are told they can be whatever they want to be, some succeed, but others end up becoming nothing, as no direction is provided for who or what they might become. A boy's gender today might be called into question. He will have to contend whether or not he is a boy or a girl. If he is confused, a trusted medical professional might tell him he needs hormone blockers and reassignment surgery. These boys of old would have been told of their origins of their first parents. They would have been told of a Father in heaven that loves and wants the best for him. He would also be taught the ways of living that would see him gain favor in the eyes of God, by exercising temperance, faith, love, kindness, and service to his neighbors. A boy today might be taught none of these things, left to figure things out for himself, rather than receiving knowledge from his parents to build on the foundations that had already been established before he ever came. What is a result of a failure to facilitate the proper development of a child and teaching them what they need to know to succeed? I think we are discovering this for ourselves. Children are being swept up in a culture of freedom to be whatever they want. And in that, like I said, many of them become nothing. Nothing of substance. We see children that are being paraded around in the media and at pride parades. According to Jonathan Haidt, it is young women that are committing suicide in increasing numbers due in part to the pressures of social media. If the youth can't find a meaningful identity, they will fail to take their rightful place in the world, and the West will have no future. The third challenge is the decline in morality. To make my case for the moral decline of the West, I will refer to the words of the most senior family judge in England and Wales, a person who is supposed to be skilled in justice, fairness, and in the law. He spoke in 2018 at the University of Liverpool, giving a lecture entitled, "What is Family Law? Securing Social Justice for Children and Young People." Despite his seemingly just motivations, the problem I see is he's calling good evil and evil good. He begins with some thoughts on various forms the modern family takes. He spoke of families that consist of two parents or three parents. He spoke of children being born via surrogacy and insemination. He spoke of families where the children are not the biological children to the parents. He mentioned single parent families. He even mentions that some children are born to polygamous families. Yet, polygamy is illegal in the United Kingdom. To top it all off, even with the mention of polygamy, according to this senior judge, all of these varying family arrangements should be, quote, welcomed and applauded. This is an example of calling good evil and evil good. Later on in his speech, he describes the sad plight of a young woman, 17 years old, the poor victim of what he previously said we should be applauding, the victim of a single-parent home. Her father had passed away, and her mother had issues of her own problems to deal with. She was placed in care due to her tendency to self-harm, but the judge found that there was nowhere suitable for her to be placed. It wasn't until he went to the papers to get the story out that a bed was found for this poor young lady. He manages to applaud and welcome family breakdown, to intervene at the sad consequences of single-parent families, and take the glory for, quote, saving, unquote, the girl, and then have the nerve to say in his speech that part of his responsibility as a judge is to speak truth to power. I would say this man has denied the truth, denied that the best place for the children, the best way to secure justice for children and young people is to provide them with a nuclear family. The trouble I have with this speech that he gave is he provides an example of what happens when families break down through no fault of their own. But what happens? Are the consequences any less if a child grows up in a single parent home of divorced parents? They still suffer the consequences of that. And these things should not be applauded. The reality is that we should not celebrate, welcome, or applaud family breakdown. We should encourage at every point for every child to be raised in their own homes by their own parents, preferably to a husband and a wife. If this judge thinks we should applaud breakdown of the family, he might also encourage us to applaud these statistics. In 2018, in England and Wales, there were 101,699 divorces. Can you think of the effect of that? Can you think of the number of children who would be affected by their parents' divorce? It would be tremendous. The call for applause from one of the senior judicial officials in the West is but one sign of the moral decline of Western civilization. If we don't change the course of Western civilization, there will be no Western civilization in the future. It will meet an end, and great will be the fall. I often hear cynical men who are keen to sit back and watch the West burn, as unrest and instability shake it to the very core. I reject such notions, as I don't believe any man or woman can sit back and watch from a safe distance. They too will be amongst the tempest, tossed to and fro like all the others. The only hope for the West is intervention, a drastic intervention. We have all the tools at our disposal. We have democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom to plot a course for a better future. Every generation has a choice to make. A choice to either live worthy of the inheritance we receive from our ancestors or to squander it. The choice is ours to make for our generation. Let's roll up our sleeves, get our hands dirty, and get to work on the great restoration of the foundations of Western civilization.